Starting.
Grieving.
So we should see people coming in. For some reason, I can't see it, but I know people are popping in there. Yes,
Hey,
all right, things are happening. Okay, so I'm gonna get to my introduction. So, hello and welcome to Creating Worlds Through Visual Development, a panel of Lightbox Expo hosted by Seneca College. I'm Stephanie Ramon, and I'm happy to be your moderator for the next 90 minutes. I'm a character designer and development artist in the animation industry. I also teach character design at Seneca School of Creative Arts and Animation. And you can find me on Instagram at Steph Draws. I also have with me Catherine Weidman and Julia Rideout helping out in the chat. You can check out these two talented artists through the handle Cat Weidman and at Julia Rideout _art. Lightbox Expo is a one-of-a-kind event, and Seneca is thrilled to be a supporter. In a minute, I'll be asking our amazing panelists to introduce themselves, but first I want to tell you how this will work today. We're using the Zoom webinar platform, which means that you can see the panelists, but they can't see each other like you would in a typical Zoom meeting. Like all sessions at Lightbox, our time here today is almost entirely attendee centered, which means that the discussion is driven mainly by the questions asked by you. So this is your chance to pick the brains of the brilliantly talented artists we have here today. We'll ask each panelist to introduce themselves and say a few words about their work and may help get the discussion going. But then it's over to you. So please make use of the Q&A button you see in the Zoom to ask your questions. Don't do it in the chat. And you can also upvote the other people's questions too. If you would prefer to speak your question, please let us know in the chat. And when there's an opportunity, we might be able to make your camera and mic available. All right, so on that note, let's welcome our panelists. I'll introduce them one by one and ask that they tell us a bit about themselves before moving to the next person. So first up is Sunmin Inn.
Hello, everyone. My name's Sunmin Inn. I'm currently at Netflix as an art director on the upcoming sometime down the line Ultraman. But that's me. Nice to meet everybody.
All right. Next up is Arthur Fong.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arthur. I am currently freelancing. I just wrapped up on Hotel Transylvania or Transformania. And I was on Mitchell's as a Viz Dev artist before that. And then before that, I was production designer on Wish Dragon. And I've been in Viz Dev for the last 11 years. And it's been great. It's been a great ride so far.
Great. And we also have Marcelo Vignali.
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been around the industry for a while, mainly working in a lot of visual development. I started working in television animation at Deke Entertainment. I later moved on to Walt Disney Imagineering. I helped, I was one of the 4 principal designers that put Toontown together and the Roger Rabbit cartoon spin ride. Then later on worked on about 7 Disney features during the 90s. Then I helped launch Sony Pictures Animation as one of the original artists that started that project. I've been nominated for Production Designer of the Year for my work on Surf's Up and the first Hotel Transylvania, coming up with the look of the picture. And I've been working over at Disney Television as heading up and helping to build the development department over there. And I'm currently doing that same thing. I'm the director of creative development over at the Company 3 Animation. And Company 3 is the studio that just did Space Jam. So for those of you that think, Company 3, what's that? They've been a production house, and what they're interested in doing is developing their own IP. And so they brought me on board to help them with that process.
Very good. All right. And I do see that Linda Chen she's appearing in the Q&A. So I'm going to try and get her on here.
Marcelo, you're a legend.
Yeah.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think it's just because I'm very old. No, that's not it. You're amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, on Hotel 4, we were looking at, I was digging through all the old hotel artwork, and I was like, dang, look at these beautiful pencil drawings. Like, I can't even do this in Photoshop.
Yeah, that was a
Right.
really fun project. That was one of those where it lasted. We were on that project. I think I worked on it for about 6 years. I think
What? The first
project,
one, or?
yeah. The first one, I think
Wow.
it lasted 7 years, but I skipped the first year. So I did some development on it, and then it went on for like a little while, and then I came on board, and then I worked on it for 6 solid years on that project. But it was one of these things. It was probably the messiest project I ever worked on. We went through 6 different directors. We went through 6 different executives on that project, and at the same time, at one point they took the entire production studio which was ImageWorks, and they left. They ended up going. Part of them went to Arizona, and no, it was New Mexico. And then they shut that down and they moved them up to Canada, and the campus was empty. And, it's funny because here we are on Hotel Transylvania, and it was a skeleton crew, literally. It was just a handful of people on this project. And I remember going to the studio, and I had my badge, and because it was, Sony Pictures was still a new studio. And I would, come Monday morning, I would swipe my badge and the little light would turn green, and I'd say, I got another week. I kept thinking at some point they were going to pull the plug, but we toughed it out, and I think that's what it takes. It takes really tenacious people, and we were very tenacious in making sure that we got everything right. When we got Gendy Tartakovsky, another guy's a very tenacious person, and we were able to sort of really bite down on that project and get it done, get it across the finish line. And then it really stabilized the company from then on. I mean, it really made a big difference. Just sort of the success of that, and then from that we ended up getting what the studio always wanted, which was a franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys paved the road. I mean, all that hard work, 6-7 years. Like the last movie, Hotel Transformania #4, took like 18 months.
Yeah, like once the track is set, right, and you get all these things, these assets built, but a lot of that was trying to build things from scratch. How do you build things from scratch? And so we had all these different stories about all these different things that we were going to do with the characters. It was going to be a Romeo and Juliet story. It was going to be this love story. And then
there we go.
Hey!
Yeah. Sorry, hello. Marcelo, you can finish your story, and then we will we'll get to second Marcelo. No, Linda Chen.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
And so we, in putting that together, the story went in all these different directions, but we couldn't pin down what this was. And eventually, that's our studio executive at the time, Bob Osher. He actually was the one that wrote the outline and said, this is what it's going to be. And it's funny, it came from our studio executive. He wrote it down like, this is it. I want it to be a father-daughter relationship, and he put the outline together. And that's when he actually had a relationship with Gendy Tartakovsky. They had known each other from a previous project, and then he brought him on board to put the picture together. But yeah, it was unbelievable, and it came on the heels of Surf's Up, which was the easiest project to work. I was working with Paul Lassane, and we were working on that, and it was one of those where I think it took maybe 2.5 years, start to finish, feature, and we had no hiccups. There was no sort of downtime. The only downtime we had was at the very end. We paused the project, and we jumped off. I think I jumped off when I started helping with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. But when that happened, we were trying to figure out, we were going to do a funny pass because the Surf's Up got a little too serious, and they were trying to lighten it up a little bit. But that was the only hiccup on it. But it knew what it wanted to be. It was fun. Everybody was having fun. We had a fantastic crew putting that together. You had Paul Lassane as production designer. I was art director. I was, and then trying to think of some of the other people. Oh, we had Joe T. Lamb on it. We had Ron Lucas. We had Noel Trial-Roux. we had Armand Serrano, and we had Marcos Mateo. I mean, it was sort of like an all-star cast. And so when you get a cast that good of artists, and we just blew through that artwork, and it looked sensational, and it was so, and everybody was so easy to work with. That was one of those. I remember when it was done, it was over. That was where the sadness comes in, because like, we've got such an amazing team. I don't want to see this go away, because it was so much fun. And but yeah, once we that project was really easy. And then the Hotel T was sort of, it was my penance for having it so easy on Surf's Up.
Oh no. Yeah, we can get a little bit into like I guess the sadness of, when projects finish, but let's go to Linda. Linda, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Linda Chen. I'm an artist in animation, primarily Viz Dev. I just got off of art directing Troll Hunters Rise of the Titans for DreamWorks and Guillermo del Toro, and I'm currently an art director at Netflix for features.
Right, great. So yeah, before everything, before we launched the webinar, there was some talk behind the scenes about how everyone kind of fell in love with everybody they've worked with before, and once a project wraps, it gets kind of sad. So yeah, I was wondering, like Arthur, like what's your experience like kind of creating that communal vibe with everybody?
Oh my goodness, I can't tell. I mean, every single project, ever since the Crudes. It's weird because you have to, especially in feature animation, you spend 3, 5, 7 years, Marcelo, sometimes on a project, and you're there with them Monday through Friday, generally 9 to 6, and you really become friends with these people. So on Crudes, like Christoph, and we kept in touch as well. It's hard not to, like, you see each other at CTN, or you go on trips together, you try to do personal projects together. And Ramon Zebach and Max Boas, Simon Rogers, all those guys on Kung Fu Panda 3, like we all still stay in touch. It's hard, again, not to stay in touch with these people. And on Wish Dragon, like Shelly and Chris Applehans, Vincent, April, those guys, everybody, it's just every single time it hurts. But the great thing is, it's like, you have their phone number. You just, like, you miss them, you text them, and you say, hey, what's up? Want to grab some boba or some food?
Nice. Yeah. All right. So boba, or I guess here in Canada we call it bubble tea. So
Bubble tea.
Bubble tea. That bubble tea is like what keeps it going. How about you, Sunmin?
About bubble tea or like ending projects? Or...
You know what? I really want to get into boba tea. Let's go. No. Yeah. So how do you stay in touch with everybody? Yeah. Have you, like, now, like, after it's been a few years, I'm guessing you're probably better at, like, adjusting to the dip.
I feel like it feels pretty raw each time.
No.
Because like you think that you're gonna get used to it because it's just part of the process, but then when it ends, it's just like it hurts so bad. Like just the project that I was right before this one, we got so close with everybody that like 4 of us actually took a trip to Japan together, like on Christmas and New Year's. Like we went on a trip together.
Nice. And
we were on the project for maybe like 7 months together. And then like when we all like dispersed, it like hurt really bad. But the really nice thing is that every time you kind of hang out with them again, it's almost like you've never really split up. That like that's the type of relationships you make, I feel, in productions where you just become so close that the amount of distance that and the time that passes by doesn't really matter. So that's like really good. But I feel like I just don't really have an answer to how to cope with it, like when it's happening. Because like, I mean, even right now, I was just saying this, like we were all talking about this right before this panel started, but even right now with my boss, like Marcos Mateo, I like tell him, I just can't imagine what it's going to be like after our production is over. And we still have like a year or something left. And we're talking about it now, like, oh man, it's like looking at your cat and being like, please don't die ever. It's just
oh
like,
no.
that's just how it kind of like feels. But yeah, you build really good relationships, and I think they last for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like one of the fantastic things about animation is like you make some really amazing friends and they kind of become your family. Okay, let's get to some of the questions. So, okay, what we have here. What resources would you recommend for someone teaching themselves Viz Dev due to lack of access to art school? So, any online resources or even books or practices that you would recommend for someone, who just can't actually go to an art school? Let's go to Linda.
Oh.
Then we'll go to
Okay,
Arthur.
Linda.
Yeah.
I think there are a ton of options right now in our more like digital age. There are different options for like obviously different budgets as well. I really like Concept Design Academy and Brainstorm schools, like as far as like online schooling goes, if you do need a more structured like instructor based kind of like education, like if that you're that type of person. But I do feel like there are a lot of different options on sites like Gumroads, where you can find like with your budget and what you can expend and how to like get the education you need. But aside from that, like, I think YouTube actually has a ton of very informational videos and a lot of like mini classes on there. Like I know Ethan Becker does a lot of animation based, if that's where you're going, animations where you're going, like he does a lot of animation based YouTubes. So I think the resources are definitely out there. I won't lie, it's like a little tougher with like, like dependent on your budget and your resources, and access to internet obviously is a huge part of that. But try looking into those options.
Nice. Okay, Arthur.
Well, I was gonna say, and just because I'm geeking out with Marcelo over here, but when I was in art school, I used that Surf's Up art book as like my Bible, and that's what I felt like. Okay, if I wanted a job in animation, oh, there you go. And like, if I wanted a job working at Sony or DreamWorks, I just like studied those art books because they were kind of showing the quality of work and also just the thinking. I mean, a lot of times too, I think, earlier for me as well, I just kind of ignored the reading part of it. But there, there's a lot of text, but after reading through it, it's so insightful. Like they kind of interview the production designers or art directors, and they basically just lay out what they were thinking or how the process as far as like building this world. I learned so much from art books when I was back in college. And we are fortunate now in the to 2021 where there's classes like Schoolism, Concept Design Academy, Rad How To School. There's a lot of these great resources. But at least for me, I still love looking at the art books because it clearly just shows like, oh, this is like professional work. This is the work coming out of the studios. Like, how do I get my work up to that level, or at least try to aim for that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
good. That resource exists. And I think that the young people would be smart to pay attention to that because it's all laid out. It isn't a hypothetical. No, it's the art of, and you can open up that book and immediately see what it took to make that picture. And I think it's important. I think sometimes artists, we have a tendency to look at our personal development, and we're invested in our personal development. And we try really hard to get our artwork to be better and better. And when we get our artwork to be better, we've drawn something that looks really cool. We're like, that's going in my portfolio. This is going to get me a job. But they don't think about it from the opposite end, which is, what does your employer need? And I think that that's a really important thing. And that's when you're looking inside one of those art books, that tells you what the employer needs. You need not just character designs, but character turnarounds. You need character expressions. You need exploration. So all of these things, and these are specific things. And if you're focusing on one aspect, which is, I want to learn how to draw characters, and you learn how to draw it from one particular angle, or you have one sort of like these little tricks or something that you put on there to make something look really good, or you spend a lot of time painting it and really rendering it, and it doesn't have an application to the industry, then you wonder, like, my work looks really good, why can't I get hired? And so it's really important to, to pay attention to things like that, those books. I think that this really is, it's a golden age of education for artists. Because when I was starting out, these things didn't exist. You either went to Cal Arts, which was the only place where you could get that education. You went to Cal Arts and got the education, or you didn't. I mean, even the Illusion of Life book wasn't something that was readily available. I didn't find out about that till later. I mean, I got first printing book, right? But it was sort of like, what? They wrote all this stuff down? But up until then, nobody had done anything like that. There were no art of books. But the only thing that you had is that every now and then they would play something on the television, and you had this little tiny booklet called the TV Guide. And in the TV Guide, I remember that they had these little, like, hey, the Flintstones are going to be on at 7, and they had a picture of the Flintstones. And I would tear these things out, and I would keep these, and like, oh, these are cartoons. This is Bugs Bunny. This is the Flintstones. There was no internet. And so you think about like today, that not only can you do that, you can go online and you can listen to some of the videos that I put out there. And imagine that, that somebody can click on it and I can be talking to them at any place in the world. I mean, if they have access to the internet, they have access to whatever it is I've said. And all these other countless professionals that have done the same thing. Some of the art of videos that were done. I know things for Lilo and Stitch. All of that stuff was, it is online. You go online, you can find it. So not only do you have access to some of these schools, you just have access to so much information, so much knowledge. And more so, I think the most important thing for those people that are struggling is you have to find out who you are and how you can apply yourself into the industry. What is it that you want to do? Focus on that. And so knowing who you are, where your strengths are, what you're interested in, those things are probably at least equally as important as to the information that you're going to be picking up. And the information, look, when I look at a portfolio, and I go through dozens of portfolios, per a week, when I'm flipping through a portfolio, clicking through links, I'm going through that. I'm looking. I don't care where somebody went to school. I don't care. And you're looking to see whether or not that person can do the artwork. So for those of you that think like, oh, I don't have a really good education. Oh, I didn't spend a lot of money on an education. That doesn't matter to me. I really don't care. The most important thing is I want to see, can you do the work? I want to flip through the portfolio. I want to click through these links. I want to see if your capacity, if you have the capacity to do the work. And then sometimes, like when I really like the work, I'll be interested. Oh, who did they work with? Where did they go to school? But that comes after. But for me, the most important thing is, do I like the work? So those that think that they're at a disadvantage, no, this really is a golden age for them.
Yeah, there's so much out there. And yeah, I remember like just collecting any type of like print media I could in the late 90s, early aughts. So Disney Adventures, they were perfect. Sometimes they would have like art that just wasn't released anywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. So to pick up on that, so like how did you guys get your first job in the industries, and what are the best pieces to have for applying for VizDev in studios?
Sunmin?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I think when I was in school, I tried my best to apply to every and any opportunity that I possibly could find. It did not matter if it was a big studio. It did not matter if it was a small studio. It did not matter if it was a foreign studio. I applied to everything that I saw, and it did not matter. I was happy to get any opportunity. And I think that those internships and small opportunities actually built up, and I was able to continue to meet people. I was continuing to make small pieces. And, even in those smaller kind of, and I say them smaller, and because I guess like size wise of the company, they are smaller, but I've had like some of the most valuable lessons in those opportunities that I still kind of maintain today. And so I really urge you all to, make sure to, not feel like you must have an opportunity at Disney and it's not gonna matter if it's not Disney, or, you know, it has to be a big studio, because I promise you, you know, all of the experiences that you have in any studio will help you to learn a bunch of things that will help you in the longer run. And so I would urge you to just apply to anything and everything and just take every opportunity, you know, and make sure you take advantage of them and do your best and learn as much as you can. That's just how I went about it when I started off. What about everybody else? I'm actually very curious.
Yeah, how about Linda?
Yeah, I actually was in mobile games before this. I was in like game companies, and the best piece of advice I've ever gotten was from my sister Helen, which I'm sure like some of you know of her. She told me it didn't matter what I thought of myself, just send my work out, because who knows how other people will react to it, because I was stopping myself from these opportunities, like vibing off of what Sunmin said is like I was stopping myself from these opportunities because I was insecure. But just send it out, because you don't know what you're going to get back in the universe. And you know, that's how I got my first job in animation. So that was a very valuable piece of advice for me.
That is really helpful. Yeah.
Yep. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
how about?
oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I just wanted to like bring up just like one example of like how it actually like helped out. I interned at like Disney theme parks, and you know, obviously I wanted to work for Disney animation, you know. Even my boss at Disney Imagineering knew I wanted to work for animation. Like that's how much I was like spewing out this like I must work in animation. But I really made sure that I did a good job there. I made sure that, you know, I was there on time. I did more than I could possibly do and make sure that everybody was happy with my work. Fast forward, like later down the line, I interview for a role or like a visitive job for Mary Poppins Returns. And I meet with Jeff Turley, who I've been like, oh my gosh, I've been looking up to you for so long. And he says that he wanted to hire me because I had the experience from theme parks, because I could design things on a set, because Mary Poppins has to walk around that set. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad. See, like everything just kind of like comes together at a certain point. So I just wanted to say that to be encouraging, and you know, just like every opportunity will help you out, I promise.
Absolutely. Your brain's got to be a sponge. How about you, Arthur?
Oh, yeah, I think I might have mentioned this yesterday at the production design panel, but you know, we had like these sort of summer, or at least at Art Center, summer our departments would ask us to try to get internships, and I had known at that time, you know, because Art Center is in California, there was a lot of people applying to Disney and DreamWorks that, you know, my peers that were way better than I was. So I purposely actually sent my portfolio to Blue Sky because I had thought, you know, there was just probably less competition there. And fortunately that worked out. And also that worked out because, you know, two of the other candidates that Blue Sky was originally going to pick, they got hired at DreamWorks. So, but, you know, in the beginning, you know, I was also just super hungry. And I was just doing some props for Rio too, like designing chairs and designing couches. But it was through sort of networking and meeting people at Blue Sky that eventually, like, they had talked to somebody, a friend of theirs that worked at DreamWorks. And when I went back to school at Art Center, you know, they had asked to go talk to Patrick Hannenberger, who was teaching at that time at Art Center, and he was kind of the one that helped me sort of hand my portfolio into DreamWorks. But you know, I've always just, I guess I kind of lucked out with like getting these like opportunities to work at these studios. But you know, when you entered, you really just gotta really just work hard. You know, I feel like I felt so sort of expendable because you know, as a junior designer, you're just kind of doing props. It's hard to prove yourself, but you find opportunities to do that, you know, and on something like on Crudes, you know, I was just there kind of doing surfacing on like, you know, texture painting on rocks and plants. And that was the bulk of the work, was just like a lot of rocks and plants. But I also found that, you know, they wanted to do like, at least I had overheard one of the meetings that Chris Sanders was looking for like beat paintings and like story moment paintings that unfortunately at that time the art department was just too busy to provide. So just on the side, I just kind of did a few paintings to see if, again, I presented this stuff to Christophe Tripp, my production designer at the time, to see if he'd be interested in showing this, because I'm eager to help, eager to just like, you know, offer whatever support I can. And that eventually was the one thing that sort of secured my job at DreamWorks, was that they found that I could provide these sort of story moment paintings and kind of fitting into a spot that they that the art department didn't have at that time. And so that was sort of kind of how it all started for me.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, and I guess just to pick up on like what Sunmin said about like, you know, it didn't matter if, you know, maybe that wasn't the job that she always wanted to stay in. You know, she was always doing her very best. So I'm sure it's the same thing when you were just painting rocks or doing furniture. I'm sure you know a lot about rocks and different furniture now, and you probably have appreciation.
I loved rocks and plants. Like, I mean, I think also the joy in Viz Dev, at least for me, is the research part. Like, I think in the in like my 10, 11 years in doing Viz Dev, my favorite part's the beginning when I'm not drawing, where I like going down the rabbit hole of just like, what kind of rock is this? And like, oh, where is this rock from? And then I learned so much just from research, and that curiosity has always been something, for me at least, that's been really, really fun. And actually the painting part and the designing part is the difficult part. Like, I actually really enjoy just reading. I mean, I'll get to the point where I'm like reading about rocks and plants and like why they exist. And but that's, I don't know, I get fascinated with anything. Like, you give me a prop design, I will make it like the best prop with some sort of narrative behind it. Just because it's fun. It's, to me, all this stuff is really exciting and a great opportunity to kind of just really put yourself into your work.
Yeah, that's so important. Like, story informs design, and the more you know about something, the more you can bring to the table with it. Okay, and how about you, Marcelo? What was your first real gig in the animation industry?
Yeah, my first real gig. Oof, we got to go back. But I did want to talk about this idea of the research, and I was talking about people having to know who they are. And I think that is that's a really important facet, that if you like to do research and you like to, you don't really have a style, you like to do a lot of exploration. If that's the thing that you like, then visual development is for you. If you like to work in a particular style, you have a very set look that you do, probably production would be best for you. There's also, I remember I've had friends that I've met in the industry. They're very, very talented, but they're difficult to work with. They're just, and you guys, we all know them, right? We love them, but they're difficult. And then, sometimes you have to kind of know, like, do you really enjoy working in a studio? And if you don't enjoy working in a studio, maybe freelance is best, where you come in, you turn in work, and your interaction is very short and it's very brief. And then you just go home, you get to focus on the work. And for other people, you really enjoy the, getting your hands dirty, rolling your sleeves up, working with people, helping to, and that's something I really enjoy, really bringing everybody up in that process. And it necessitates more of a collaboration. And so, knowing who you are and how you can fit into that process is so important. Some people love to paint. They just turn on the music and they just sit there and just go to town and just paint the most beautiful things. But they don't like to talk. They don't like to interact with they're very quiet or very shy. And so it is so important to know how you fit into the process. So I just wanted to piggyback on that. But my first gig, well, here's the thing, and because I have to go way back. When I started in animation, it was 1987. And so there was no animation industry that when I started art school in 1983. everything was collapsing. As Hanna-Barbera was going away, you had Filmation would go out of business. Just a few years later, UPA was gone. Warner Brothers wasn't doing any more animation. They had their heyday in the late 60s. And so everything was gone. And I remember I was doing my artwork in art school, and everything looked like most of it looked like it was right out of an animated film. I tried to draw like in sort of a Disney way. I tried to these backgrounds. I loved, that sort of look, that rich look that you had in animation. It didn't matter whether it was old time animation, the rubber hose animation, or more sort of this Disney look. It's something I really enjoyed. And so those are the things I really went after. And so everybody was scratching their head. What are you doing? Why are you doing? Why are you going in this direction? There's no animation industry. And but I was really stubborn, and I went through that whole process through school doing that. Drawing these characters and trying to get this stuff to come to life. And in 1987, I finished school and I had this portfolio. And I took it. A friend of mine said, "Hey, look, they're hiring over at Deke. They're looking for people to do storyboard cleanup work." And I took my portfolio over there, and they looked at it and they said, "Sure," and they hired me over there to do storyboards. I think I was doing. It might have been the real Ghostbusters, or it was Starcom. It was one of those two projects. Maybe it was both at the same time, but I remember that I got hired. No, it was Starcom, and I got hired to do the work. But they hired, so they would be paying me from like Monday to Friday, right? But when I got the job, I came in to talk to them on Friday, and they said, "Can you come in tomorrow?" It's Saturday. I'm like, "Sure, yeah, I'll come in." And so I came in, and the director was finishing up on some work that he needed to get done, and I was in a desk all by myself, sitting there drawing all the stuff that he was giving me to draw, but that was it. So like, immediately that's how I got into the business. But but here's the thing, that and that's how I got with the strength of my portfolio, that I was working through art school, and I was tenacious in what I wanted. I knew what I wanted, even though there was no industry, it didn't matter. This is the work I was going to do. This is who I was. And I stuck to it. And that was 1987 when I got hired. In 1988, Roger Rabbit comes out, and in 1989, The Little Mermaid comes out, and animation just exploded. And I had the right portfolio at the right time, and I was at the right place. And it was really fortuitous. But had I listened to all those teachers, had I listened to all those people that were telling me, not to do this work, there was no industry, there is no more animation, that I wouldn't have had the career that I did. So a lot of it, a lot of people out there, I know that they are out there. There are people telling them they can't make it, that they can't do it, that they should stop, they should quit, they should. And I say baloney. Find out how you fit into the process. Maybe you want to be a character designer, but you suck at character design, right? Well, find a way to get in. Maybe you'd be a great production manager. Maybe you'd be a good production coordinator or a line producer. Maybe you'd be really good at some of these other things in animation, and you have an opportunity to service animation in a different capacity than you thought that you were going to contribute. But if this is where you want to work, stick to it and make it happen. And art is one of these things where you get what you put into it. So if you don't dedicate yourself to it, you're not going to get yourself ready for it. But if you are dedicating yourself to it, then put yourself out there. It's just like Linda was saying. You get your work to a certain point, put it out there, let other people decide. Don't let those insecurities hold you back. And don't let people try to talk you out of something. There's a place for you in animation. It may not be exactly what you thought. I mean, I thought I was going to be an animator. I thought I was going to be a 2D animator. That was sort of like the dream. That kind of doesn't exist. And I ended up being, a production designer, and I ended up having a tremendous amount of success in my career. And now I'm an executive at the company 3 Animation as the director of creative development. So I've had this sort of career that is sort of weaved around the animation industry. So don't think that it's a static thing. It's not a static thing. There's a place for you, and you have to find out what that place is, but you have to get in the industry first. So don't let people try to talk you out of that. Find your way.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic and powerful message. Like, yeah, it's so important for people to hear that from you. Okay, so let's go in a different direction now. Zingleberry asks, any advice on ergonomics? So like back health, working on a Cintiq, etc. So this person happens to be struggling with pain. So, how do you guys sit at your desk? How do you, position your tools? I'm wondering if there's one person here who has the total answer.
It's funny. I don't. I only sit at my desk for like 15 minutes at a time. I'll doodle and then I'll walk off. I'll come back and I'll doodle. I'll walk off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't. It's I have a lot of friends that had like I don't know, like wrist problems or back problems, and I really do admire, because they are so focused in their work, and they really just are able to sit there still for like 4 hours to do this painting. I'm different. I have this itch. I'll just like get up, walk around, grab a glass of water. I also exercise a lot. I think one thing we got to remind ourselves is, like, as human beings, like we're meant to be like moving a lot. So, and with our jobs, it does get really easy to become comfortable with that sitting at your desk. So you sort of have to find ways. Like I find ways to, I'll bike, I'll weight lift, things like that throughout the, not throughout, but like throughout the week, like once a day sort of. I think it's super important to stay healthy, just because, again, our job doesn't really allow us to kind of have that movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, we're not just like hands and eyeballs. Like we're attached to, meat. We got to take care of the meat.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Yeah.
I'm curious from Sunmin and Linda too, and I mean, and Marcelo, that in leadership, right? Like you guys are always like walking to different rooms and different meetings. So do you feel like there's a difference from when you were artists to the leadership position or roles?
There's a lot more meetings. Let's just put it that way.
Do you feel healthier though? Do you feel healthier that you're moving around?
For me, I need a little bit of time to kind of get in the groove when I'm doing actual painting or actual development work. Like I need a little bit of time to get into it and to like get absorbed into it. So when it's broken up by a lot of meetings, it's a little hard for me to like sit down and focus. So sometimes I do feel like I'm missing a lot of the bulk of the actual work versus the communication of work. But like Marcelo mentioned earlier, and Sunmin probably, I like just being able to have great communication with the artists and grow everybody on the team. Like that is a really nice side effect of the new meetings and everything like that. So it's a balance.
Linda just stole every word out of my mouth. Just said.
Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is that like all the meetings happen now on Zoom. So it's like, I'm not even going to different rooms. I'm just sitting here into different rooms. So it's like, I don't know if I'm healthier, but I think that, all these meetings and trying to like make sure that my brain is fresh. Like I force myself to like, okay, what can I do? Like, can I eat healthier? Can I work out a little bit more, to make sure that I'm healthy so that I'm not like crashing down or something like that. So definitely, I think that the added responsibility from BizDev to art directing, like it pushes you to try to figure out ways to stay, healthy physically and mentally and all that stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's all about like performance. It's like performance isn't just for athletes. There's so much to be learned there about, what goes in your body. Like nutritional psychology is a thing. And yes, exercise is so good for your mental health. I want to touch upon, Arthur, your question about, okay, so if now that you're like supervising, you're in a position where you're dealing with other people, you kind of have like subordinates. I guess it would be really important to actually have like a good practice, be healthy, because that trickles down to the people that are working for you, right? And I'm curious, if you've had any experiences with just
Oh
trying
yeah,
to like set a good example.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also like I've heard this before from directors and I mean and other leadership roles, people in leadership roles where it's like if they work really, really hard, they find that also trickles down to the rest of their departments. And if they're like, if you have a director who's like a little lazier, the rest of the team is just kind of a little lazier. And that goes, I think that's the same with, I think being healthy, and also, like mentally, right? Like I've also been on, no, I have not, but I've heard of projects where there's a lot of like gossip going around or a lot of like, and that negative energy sort of just continues to trickle around the rest of the team. But you can also twist that in a way where if you put out a lot of like positive vibes and like really good energy around all your teammates and like a very like collaborative sort of again like playground for everybody, and that I feel like that I've been fortunate enough to like work on projects like that. Like Kung Fu Panda 3 was had that kind of experience, because I think it all started from the top. Like Ramon Zebach and Max Boas, they really just had this created this art department that allowed us to just sort of really kind of work together and kind of also open up that communication. Like they would have like an artist sort of partner up with someone else sometimes just to like go on an assignment, just so that we had that kind of like communication, because I think they knew too that like a lot of times we're just stuck in our own little cubicles or on our own little desks. So it's important to like, just like get up and stretch and like talk to somebody else. But it all started from the top. It all started from somewhat, because they also showed that like Ramon and Max, they showed their kind of partnership on the project and like how that really kind of elevated the level of art. And we saw that, and we really like admired that, and we all sort of kind of chased that goal as well.
Yeah. It's funny, like you might not, there's, animation school doesn't exactly prepare you for like a leadership role sometimes, not in the traditional sense, right?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
things that simply just aren't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The money aspect, how to negotiate, how to get along with other people, how to work together, how to provide effective leadership. All of those things are just things that I remember, sometimes again, conversations with my friends like, yeah, we should do a panel on some of these, verboten subjects. And yeah, just really sort of, get into that.
Do it. We can turn this into the verboten panel.
Because
Okay.
sometimes we just talk about like the inspiration and the art, and we neglect some of these things like, ergonomics and exercise. I mean, that's a really important question for what it is that we do, or sometimes dealing with some difficult people in the office. And here's the thing that I have discovered is that, think about it, for artists, in order to get good at what you do, you have to spend a tremendous amount of time alone. It's just you and your Cintiq, or you and your painting, you and your drawing, and there is nobody around. And it doesn't just start when you're working, it starts when you're in school. All the other kids, at recess hit, and all the kids, they bolt, they run outside, and you're trying to finish up a drawing, and you're standing there just finishing it up. Why? Or even lunchtime, everybody would eat really fast and go out to do something, and you're sitting there, not talking, and you're with your best friend and you're drawing, and you aren't even saying a word to each other. You're just sitting there drawing. And so what happens is that artists have a tendency to not develop that aspect of themselves. And so in some way, we're sort of stunted. So the other kids are out there and they're at the swing. And there's one kid, and he says, "You've been on the swing for a really long time. I'm going to give you 5 more swings. And after 5 swings, it's my turn." And then the kid swings 6 swings. And then so they run over and they go talk to the teacher's aide. "I talked to Tommy and told him." And so they're constantly negotiating. They're constantly interacting with one another, developing these social skills. And the reason why artists are very sort of stunted, sometimes they're shy, sometimes we say the wrong things, it's because we don't have that level of experience, because we've spent so much time alone. It's just us and our work. And this is an aspect that needs to be addressed. I think that one of the things that is really helpful is to join a Toastmasters group and be around other people, and it forces you to interact with them and forces you to talk. It's a powerful thing. I think that it's another aspect that isn't discussed in animation or in art.
Going outside your comfort zone and really pushing yourself to learn skills just outside of animation that are going to help you so much.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes things happen, and how do you deal with it? And you need to be able to communicate. You need to communicate to your art director. Sometimes you need to communicate to your producer. Sometimes something happens and it wasn't your fault, and you have to have the verbal skills to explain what happened or why it happened that way. And so, part of animation, and here's the tricky thing. So all these artists, they spend all this time alone, developing their skills, getting really good, but talking to no one, just being inside their head. And then you get all of these people from all over the world that have been doing this, and you put them all together and you force them to work together as a team. and then you wonder, like, well, what's going on? These artists are weird. It's like, well, yeah, it's those things that we just have to learn these skills. It's important.
And then somehow, like a year in, you just become the tightest crew ever, and you don't want to leave each other.
Oh yeah.
Like you do get over it.
Well, exactly. Once you bond with these people, oh my gosh, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. It is. It becomes like family.
Yeah. That's my first introduction was just like going to animation school, and I was like painfully shy. But after it was just big depression time. Like, everybody went their separate ways.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this, I think sometimes when you're not in the industry, you think that culture comes from the studio. You think, oh, if I just could get into Pixar, oh, if I just could get into Sony, if I just could get into Company 3 Animation, that you think that it's the studio that is going to give you that. No. It's the relationships you have with the team. So for some of the people out there, it's important to figure out who you want to work with. Find somebody, say, I want to work with that person. They're going to get me to the next level, and then focus on that, and then try to see if you can get in over there. But it doesn't come from Disney. It doesn't come from Pixar or any of the other studios. It comes from the relationships that we have with each other, that bond, and we have a tendency to float around from one studio to another.
Yeah. Okay, I should go to one of the questions. Actually, does Catherine want to field a question?
Hi, guys. I'll be asking a question from Jacqueline C., who asks, for people who didn't discover biz dev as a career until they finished school or started working, what can they do to gain relevant experience? Internships and entry-level jobs seem to be only open to current college students or recent grads.
That's a good question. Yeah. Sunmin, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sunmin.
I've actually worked with quite a few people who did not go to, an animation college or had previous experiences in different fields. And their way of getting into the industry was always to, take classes like CDA or, take classes like schoolism. And then because you're getting experience, the direct experience of learning from somebody who works in the industry, and then you're basically showing up and showing that you can do certain assignments, you can do certain things, and then building that relationship with your instructors and meeting people there who are like-minded, who are also trying to get into the industry as well. I think that was one of the main ways that I've kind of observed from people who did not have an art background or an animation background. But I think that that's probably a pretty helpful way to go about it. Does anybody else know any other ways?
I was gonna say, I think a lot of times when we're looking at like let's just say a summer internship or entry-level jobs, we're kind of really narrowed on like just a few studios, and also just like whatever is on their really awful website. Like Sony's website is terrible. You can't find where you submit like your like a summer internship. But I love the story of a friend of mine who when we were both at ArtSet at the time trying to get internships, and he really wanted to work at Blur Studios that do all the cinematic kind of artwork and design for League of Legends and other VFX stuff. But they didn't have a internship program on their website or even on their opportunities sort of link. He just reached out. He just, emailed info@blur.com and said, hey, I love your stuff. Here's my portfolio. I don't know if you guys are offering internships, but if you are, I'd love to be part of it. And they ended up reaching out to him, even though there wasn't a job listing for that. So I think like if there's any sort of opportunities or companies really want to work for, one, watch your favorite Netflix show till the end. The credits will usually have like a studio kind of like listed, like where all the artwork is coming from. Reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm interested in internship. Here's where I'm at. Maybe you're not a student. Maybe you just have like entry level work that artwork and portfolio that you got from CDA or schools and things like that. And just again, going back to what Linda said, if you don't you're missing every single opportunity when you don't put your work out there and submit your work. And even when the website isn't listing anything, there's always a contact email. Just contact the person. Just send that stuff out there.
Yeah, you can also find people, like if you find an artist that you're really interested in, you can find them on LinkedIn. You can find that sometimes they have an Instagram channel. You can reach out to them through Facebook. So you can reach out to them on a personal level. I remember a friend of mine, when we were in art school, we ended up finding out there was Fred Warder was painting backgrounds over at Hanna-Barbera. And so I don't even know how, it was Paul Wee, and some of you know Paul Wee in the industry. And I think it was him that called Hanna-Barbera and got the number for his office. And it's like, well, let's call him. Let's just go ahead and call him. So we called him and we were like, we want to meet with you. And he was sort of like, okay. And we did. We drove out there and we met with him, and it was kind of funny that he was, the whole time he was scratching his head like, why do they want to meet with me? What's up with that? But no, it was a wonderful thing. It was a way that that we were connecting out with some of the artists that we really admired.
And just to add on what Arthur was saying earlier, like recruiters have never been more accessible till this point. Like I see recruiters like accounts on Instagram, on Twitter, LinkedIn, like these recruiters, their job is to facilitate the artist company relationship. Do not feel ashamed to reach out to them, like message them, DM, slide in those DMs, like they want to know about the talent that's out there, so just a little bit of digging can bring up like a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, yeah. LinkedIn, and again, like to say, LinkedIn is a good one too. Like I found if you just kept it really short and ended it with a question, people would reach out to you, because that's the fantastic thing about the animation industry. It's full of like so many like wonderful, helpful people that, just want to see you succeed. So they're very happy to share their knowledge with you.
Yeah, and we're just folks like everybody else. I mean, we went, some of us are older than others, but it was a great comment that was made. I was painting with this fellow, unbelievable artist, Dan Guzet, and we were drawing and painting the model, and he was doing these paintings, and this painting was gorgeous. He had set up his palette like a John Singer Sargent, and he had this sort of style of painting, but he showed up and then he was like, oh, I'm going to paint like John Singer Sargent today. And so he started to paint like John Singer Sargent. These were beautiful little paintings. And I'd never thought that you could paint like John Singer Sargent. I always thought that you would paint like John Singer Sargent when you got really good. And when you had reached this level in your work, that's where you would be. But no, he saw it as a style. There was a way that you set your palette. There was a way that you modeled the paint and your interpretation of the figure. So it blew my mind. And I said, wow, you're a master. And I was really young at the time. And he looked and he goes, no, he says, I'm a student just like you. It's just that some students are older than others. So when you're out there and you're thinking about this, just think that we're students just like you. We're students in this process. We love this process. We're constantly, developing and searching for answers on our end as well. And so you reaching out to us, it's not as a daunting task as you might think, because it wasn't that long ago we were in the same situation, and still am. I remember meeting, having a chance to meet Frank Frazetta, and he was an idol of mine when I was a kid, and I saw him at the convention.
My God.
And I sat there and I just stared at him, and I thought, I have no idea what to ask him, so I never got in line.
No, no.
I was speechless. I just stared at him. I was like a creepy stalker.
Just
What was I
ask
gonna
him.
say? That I love your work, and that was it. That was it. And so I thought, like, maybe it's better I don't.
Just ask him about baseball. He was a big
Yeah,
baseball guy.
He was a baseball player.
Yep.
I should have.
Yep. That's okay. That's okay. Like, just being in his presence, I'm sure it's just like, yes.
Yeah, there he
God.
was. He was a real person, and I could go and talk to him, and that was it. It was a daunting thing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully sooner than later, like Lightbox will be back in person, and yes, we can all ask each other about baseball and not be afraid. Okay, let's go to another question. Oh, I like this. Okay, so just talking about, being a bit older, but still being a learner. Courtney Lasik asks, is it ever too late to get a job in visual development? Is it harder to break into the industry in your 30s or 40s or beyond even? Yeah. Yeah, I like to think there's no ageism.
No, there isn't. If you can do the work, that's the thing that's most important. One of the guys, Ron Lucas, he was an amazing painter, and he had set up these workshops. He was, I think, living in Washington or Oregon. I can't remember where he was at, and he had these workshops. And art back then, you didn't have the internet where you could learn some of these things. You had to actually go and travel to wherever he was. And so some of the guys had traveled out there. I think it was Kevin Altieri, and his wife had traveled out there to meet with him and paint with him. And he had, Ron Lucas had studied with Sergei Bongard, the Russian painter. And so when they got out there and they painted with him, they brought that contact back, and they gave him an opportunity to come and do paintings on the Prince of Egypt. And that's how he got into the industry. But he was already a well-known oil painter at the time, and he just took his skills and adapted them. There was no training, there was no art school for him. It was just that he knew how to paint, and he knew what colors worked together. And then he was my art director on Hotel Transylvania, and he was the one that came up with that really lush palette that we had on that project. And then he was also one of the painters on Surf's Up. And then he was, it's just an amazing talent.
Yeah, I have to brag a little bit about my ex-coworker Kundo Rabaudi. He was he did model making on the side, like just as a side project. He did these like these little figurines where he just painted them up as a hobby. It was just a hobby. And he met the producer of Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas or something like that. He submitted his like little figurines, and he got a job painting for the puppets in Nightmare Before Christmas. But after that, even though he had no 3D experience, he dove himself into 3D and learning about new skills and new, like it's the same skill set in taste and like understanding 3D form and everything like that. He translated it with the newer technology, and he's been in the industry for like 25, 30 years or something like that, and going strong. And like, it's just about opening yourself up to like continual education, but using those base skills of like aesthetic and taste and design that like he already knew from model, like painting those little figurines and models. And like, I believe like to this day, he's still like just being a badass in the industry. And I think that's what it really is. And he's, I'm really sad about the day he's going to retire, because we're not going to see more of his work in films, but happy for him also that he's gotten to that point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
I also
great.
think sometimes like we imagine it's just filled with young people in animation, just because some of these like older in their 30s or 40s. They just don't. They're not in like a social media presence. They're really just working. You know, the last art director I worked with, Mike Isaac, he had an architecture. He had a like architect degree, and he was an architect before he joined animation. And he told me it's the same thing. He's like, oh, he didn't do it till his, I think it was not till his 30s, maybe like early, yeah, I think probably in his 30s. But again, like what Linda said, just took all that understanding of form and design and like set, and he basically just built things in 3D and then drew over them and sort of like help kind of provide layouts and sets for the production designer to kind of scout and look through, because it's all relative. It's all the same.
Mm-hmm. It really is like art, like it just transfers to like so many different industries and, you know, different types of productions. Okay, let's go to another question. Okay, because we mentioned Frank Frazetta, I'll ask everybody, like, what's your favorite artist and who's your inspiration? I'm gonna go with Sunmin first.
Oh man. Okay.
Picked on you.
There's just like so many, like I don't know if I can like pick one, but you know, I love Jamie Hewlett, I love Yoshitomo Nara, I love Clint, I love Dave McKean, I love Alexander McQueen. I don't know, like there's just like so many, but usually when I look at artwork, it's just kind of like an eclectic group of art. It's not really residing just in animation or, you know, and stuff like that. I think a lot of the inspiration that I do get is from like photography or like something that's like completely, not completely, but like sort of unrelated to the industry that I work in. So, and I try my best to, not my best, but like I'm just more interested in like getting inspiration from like a lot of artists at the same time. Maybe that's why like I can't really pick out one person, but I wonder, you know, what everybody else, who everybody else is inspired by.
Yeah. Somebody thought you said Lightning McQueen, but no, we're talking about Alexander McQueen, the fashion designer.
Yes,
yes.
And yeah. Lightning McQueen.
Why not? Okay, how about you, Arthur?
You know, I'm on the same page with Sunmin. It's hard to pick just one artist, but it's also I am looking a lot of times outside of animation for inspiration, and we all, like James Turrell was such a huge influence that we brought into Mitchell vs. the Machine, and you can see it just kind of it really held up with during in like the robot sort of like world. I was like a traditional sort of illustrator and painter for a long time, at least when I applied to Art Center. So I still love like classic paintings, like oil painters like Sorolla, Edgar Payne, a lot of those impressionist kind of painters. I just love the way they can, you know, paint something so sort of like abstract, but from a distance it looks so clear. And at the moment, those are sort of the ones that kind of stuck out to me. Henry Henchy, you know, I know we all really love the way Peter Chan paints, Pixel P. But him and I, when we were doing planar paintings together, he studied a lot of Henry Henchy's work. And it was just a really like interesting way of sort of kind of making a really very not a lot of contrast and value in your paintings, but really specifically picking colors for each plane of a certain object. So yeah, we learned at least most of, I think, my growth, a lot of it just comes from looking again at artists and inspiration outside of animation. But if I had to name some in animation, Helen Chen I'm a huge fan of Helen, and Ron Kerniawan. I love his work. He's I don't think he's on social media that much, but he's a fantastic designer. And a lot of people I work with too. I'm always really impressed with the people I work with, and I get to work with every day.
Mm-hmm. All right. How about Linda?
My answer is probably like very similar. I actually really, when I was growing up and like a little younger, I really liked like more Eastern European schools of like drawing illustration. Like Fetchin was a really big, I really love the specificity like Fetchin did. And of course, John Singer Sargent, Joaquin Soraya, all of those people. Though I don't really feel like necessarily like my art like gives a clue to that, I guess. But yeah, I just also Richard Schmid, very big influence in especially the art school days of plein air painting and everything like that. But as for like animation, I do feel like there was like that kind of like newer school of digital art that came up. So like Craig Mullins, Ian McKeag, those are also like very big influences.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, Marcello. So we got Frank Frazetta. Who else? Who else is like a huge influence for you?
I think it's the same sort of thing. Is like I have a very eclectic taste. It can range from abstract art to cubism to and you would think that that these things are sort of exclusive from each other. That you've got traditional artwork and then abstract artwork, and there's a sort of a rivalry between them. It's the abstract artists don't think that representational artists are sophisticated enough, and then and then traditional artists have this battle with the abstract artists, and they don't think that they're good enough to paint in this particular, and there's this tension, and I don't see it like that. I see them as being very much the part of the same thing, and it's in and I had this sort of awakening and realization of that. But as I've gotten older, I went through all these phases where all of these artists and influences were very important to me, and then it started becoming more about the storytelling for me. How to take all these individual pieces and how do you tell a story with it? And that to me was the sort of what's really kind of changed my career. And that's why I started going more towards the development side. And I approached Sony at the time about how to do development. And then I took those ideas over to Disney Television and now over at Company 3 doing exactly the same thing. So for me, I love just watching film. And I mean, this is my new thing, right? Just to watch film and analyze them and just redraw storyboards from, reverse engineer it. Like and I'll draw diagrams. Where's the camera? Where do they put the camera? Where is it? What were they saying? This is really great. I love the way they did the scene cut. And I'm just sitting there and I'm redrawing all of these things because for me, the storytelling is such an important thing.
Yeah. And you guys bring up a really important point that yes, it's good to have like those animation artist influences, but to really inform yourself, it's good to like look outside of animation and see what else inspires you, what other types of artists, or even just anything really.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Catherine, is there a question you'd like to ask?
There is actually. M asks, what are some negative or difficult aspects of the job that an aspiring viz dev artist should be aware of?
It's a good one. So
this is not necessarily a negative. I think this is more about perception. I think production art has a very wide range of things that we need to supply the pipeline with, supply the project with, which includes a lot of like model packets, props, not so glamorous stuff. I think it's really easy to get the idea that viz dev is all like these beautiful beat paintings that are like blue sky paintings. And then, when you're actually in the job, you're like, okay, there's 3 teacups, draw the teacups, and even as an art director, like on my last project, I still did a lot of model packets because that's what the production required to build the assets to create a whole and complete world. So I think maybe a negative to people is not understanding that expectation. That's not just the like beautiful things all the time. It's all the technicality, the nitty gritty, the soccer balls and staplers. Like I had to draw a post-it note that had like 10 revisions on it because it's post-it note. Like just I think that's something I would like to bring up.
Yeah,
It's very production minded, isn't it? You need to get the job done, and not everything is going to be that big moment, that big beat in color or design. A lot of it is just that. I mean, I remember when I got hired over at Walt Disney Imagineering, the manager there said, "We do windows here." And yeah, it's sort of like that idea that you want to do a house cleaning and you're just like, no, I don't do dishes, I don't do windows. Like you don't do that. When you get in animation, you do windows. You have to get out there and you have to do all these different jobs. And sometimes it's not that glamorous. You're doing minutia. But it can be really fun too, because that was one of the things that I had a chance to do, which when I was working on Mulan, and we were doing all these designs, and I was designing like Mulan's room, and that was a lot of fun. Designing her armoire where she had her suit of armor, and so I was the first one that drew out what that armor was going to look like and stuff. And so it was a lot of fun. And then after that, it was like, yeah, you know what? We need some help doing this other thing. Why don't you come up with all of, we're going to have you do some special effects stuff. I'm like, what? Special effects? Yeah, we want to take the look, the Tang Dynasty look, and we want to apply it to our special effects. And we don't think our special effects team, they're going to give us realistic effects. We want them to look like they're in the Tang Dynasty. Somebody's got to do that. And this Hans Bacher asked me to do it. So I went in and I started doing everything from, when they fire the rockets, the smoke that comes out, what does it look like when it crashes and explodes? What does that look like? And so I was drawing that. And then within, just minutes really of drawing that stuff, suddenly I was all into it. I was elbow deep, just drawing this stuff out. And in the picture, it looks sensational. And I look back and yeah, that was really a lot of fun to do it. But I remember that there was a certain level of disappointment because I was doing locations and they pulled me from the locations to work on the special effects. And nowadays, I really revel in the opportunities to touch projects at different levels. Whereas when I was younger, I thought that was a negative thing.
Yep.
I think to add to that is, I think it's not a negative thing, but I think some productions that you may be on, you might have to work on top of other people's work. You have to collaborate with other people. So the ownership of one piece becomes a little murky. And I think that sometimes, like going with what everybody has said so far, people kind of come into BizDev thinking that you're going to create these beautiful pieces, you're going to stamp your name on it, and you're going to create this piece, and it's going to be in your portfolio. But because ultimately it is, you're making a film, you're being a filmmaker, so you have to collaborate with other people, and also it's a business, like all these things that are kind of the given of the industry. Just keeping that in mind when you come in and you're working, and not being so like kind of dejected or feeling a little down that your ownership is being taken away sometimes. Just keeping that in mind, that it is a filmmaking kind of process. I think that would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this isn't a question, but somebody in the chat has said, Michael Gumel, he's like, I feel that in animation, there's no star player. Everybody contributes in a way, and that's awesome. It's
a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
Team sport. Yeah, no, and to the point that Sunmin just made, that it's artists, we get very possessive. We're working on something, and then you'll have that taken away from you. You have an art director come in, and they need you somewhere else, and they take this thing that you thought this was going to be the thing you were going to put in your portfolio that was going to define you, that you worked on this moment, and they take it, they give it to somebody else, and you're off doing something else. And sometimes those things can be very difficult to deal with, but you have to think about it, that you're working with a team, and this animation is a team sport.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Okay, I think we have time for one last question. So I'm gonna pick a really good one. Ooh, okay, I like this one. Anna Pros. Curious, how do you guys balance the effort between keeping your skills sharp, learning new skills to stay relevant in the industry, balancing family without burning out on top of a full-time job? How do you do it? Linda, how do you do it?
The short answer is I don't. No, sorry. I'm in a very privileged position right now where like I literally have a dog and a husband. Like that's all I need to take care of in my personal life. And with the pandemic, like I don't have kids, I don't have a baby, so I feel like I have a lot more options for balancing that lifestyle. But basically, like, I have a full-time job and I have, sometimes freelance gigs going on. I just spend all of my attention on those jobs, and then for the rest of my life, I'm like a prehensile slug on the couch for this moment in time. In the future, I would like to get back to like experiencing life, because I do feel like living like a full life is very important for like artists, like, just experiencing different things, like going like, just all of that very healthy stuff. For right now, I'm just kind of a slug.
Okay, sometimes you need to slug it up a bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. How about you, Arthur?
What? I think sometimes I was just having this conversation yesterday with a friend of mine about like how do you manage all of these, like, getting better and doing your job and all the other priorities in your life. Sometimes don't think like you have to do it all. Really don't think like you have to do it all. Like, I think it's like, oh, Sunmin's great at character design, I better get good at character design. Like, oh, Marcelo's like creative directing it. One day I better creative direct. So I better start reading books on like creative directing and like managing and all this stuff. Oh, but then I have like, family priorities of like, animal priorities, all this stuff. And it's too much. And this is Marcelo, I have to agree with you on this, but you have to know yourself. And I think the most important thing is like self-actualization and knowing that like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm good at. And I want to, use this as a way to, support myself financially or, excel in my career and really just stick to it. And I think if you're curious about either as character design or planar painting, just have fun with it. It should be fun. It shouldn't be like labor or anything. It's laborious. So like I think at least for me, I'll know whether, like, for example, I turn down a lot of jobs knowing that I can't do it. Like it's as much as like, oh, this project is super cool, I want to be part of it. Oh, but they're looking for a character designer. You know what, to be honest, I can't do character design, so I just turn it down. Or like they asked me to do like 3D modeling, I'll just turn it down because I can't do it, and I know that I can't, and I focus on like what I am good at. And so then when you continue to keep focusing on those skills, you really do become a master of that skill. And I felt like I just kept getting color jobs or like, character rendering jobs, and that sort of is what my portfolio has been built around. And of course, like if there's ever a time where your job needs you to kind of like be good at characters or be good at set dressing or set design, like you'll find that kind of motivation to spend like an hour or two every night just to get good at it. But at the same time, just don't feel like you have to do everything.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcelo.
That we have a season for different things, that because it's going to change. Like at one point I was a character designer. My focus was in character design, and then it was in background design, and then it was in production design. So all of these things, they changed. There was a time where I was, very student-minded. I didn't start a family till I was in my 30s because I was so focused. I mean, at one point when I was drawing, I would draw the figure. I would draw the figure 3 times a week, and I went to 2 classes and then 1 night class, and then I would go and paint at Steve Houston's garage. So I would go and paint with him and several other artists. But at that time, my focus was strictly on my education and growing and learning. And I just went completely into that. Once I started my family, I realized, okay, now my kids are going to need me. So I took a different approach. And then one of the reasons why I stayed at Sony for so long is that I traded the dynamic aspect of my career for stability. And so I found a way to be very useful to the process, and I stayed at the company, but I took less chances with my career for the reason I needed to create that stability for my kids. And then now my kids are grown, and sort of like, well, now that it's been sort of lifted off my responsibility, my plate of responsibility, and I'm back to a more dynamic into a more dynamic aspect for my career. So just know that you're going to be going through different stages, and it's important to know yourself and also to know where you're at in your career, because sometimes you have to dedicate more time to your kids. You can't have these things and then neglect your family. It's not going to happen that way. Don't do that. This really is, it's a job. It's a wonderful job. It's fantastic. But ultimately, your family should be your primary concern. If you're starting a family, your focus should be on that. So I always made sure that I had time to go to my kids' events. At this point, I stopped doing a lot of training after work. And I started on weekends, I would make sure that I dedicated time to them wherever they wanted to go. We'd go out, go fishing or go swimming or take them out to go play with friends. I mean, that was what my life was about. So don't think that doesn't enrich you as an artist, because especially in storytelling and animation, you have to know what life's about before you can paint it, before you can draw it and design it. You have to have these experiences. So don't think that it doesn't come with a tremendous value. So don't neglect that aspect of your life. I mean, that should be your primary concern.
Mm-hmm. That's such a beautiful point.
I wanted to add to what, just hearing that question and like kind of going way back to the beginning where Linda was saying like the insecurities of like, showing your work and like you being the judge of, your work instead of like letting others judge. And it just like kind of brought me back to the moment where I had so much anxiety and nervousness that like I had to do a lot of stuff. I had to practice, I had to learn, I had to do all of these things at the same time to catch up. And I think it's really important to distinguish, like, do you want to do it or do you think that you should do it? And perhaps like it might help to, kind of like stop getting in the way of yourself, of like, putting so much pressure on yourself to the point where the wants are starting to just like go away. Like even the things that you wanted to do, because of that pressure, you don't want to do anything anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my recommendation really is to like go to therapy, try therapy and really try to know yourself. Or, if you're like, if you used to be an emotional wreck like me, try picking up, stoicism or something, like read about it and like pick up a self-help book and really understand, okay, I am putting on all these things onto myself and this is not really what I want to do. And I think that everything will kind of come naturally after that, perhaps. Like, and this is just like one opinion, but I just like agree with everything everybody just said. And I think it's very, very important to just distinguish.
It should be fun.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it should be fun. And yeah, stoicism, super good point there. Like, yeah, it's so important. If people aren't familiar with stoicism, like start to learn about it, because it's such a helpful, like just kind of way of life. It doesn't matter like what creed or background you have. It's very applicable to this day and age as well. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to ask everybody to like go around and say like, where can we find you? Do you have any plugs? Then please plug away. So we'll start with Marcelo.
Oh, there aren't that many people with my name. So I'm very.
I have your name in the panel right now.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
No!
That is hilarious. And so, yeah, I everything is linked to me. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook art page. I have an Instagram. So, it's easy to find me. Just reach out if you're interested in connecting. So yeah, by all means.
Thank you. Okay, Arthur.
Yeah, my Twitter and Instagram is Asa. And that's just how my immigrant parents and relatives pronounce Arthur, because they couldn't pronounce TH. That's where Asa comes from. So they still call me Asa. And then I just I built a new website if you guys want to take a look. I'm really bad at social media, so I'm not good at posting my work like in a consecutive way where you guys can all enjoy it. So I just did an art dump on my website, and that's artistic, Fong.com.
Okay, great. Thank you. And how about, I guess, Marcelo #2? Where can we find Marcelo #2, aka Linda Chen?
Yeah, all of my social media is under my Chinese name, Yingju Chen, because Linda Chen is already a very accomplished dentist on. But But yeah, I have a panel tomorrow for Troll Hunters: Rise of the Titans, which is the Guillermo del Toro movie for DreamWorks, and I'm really excited about that. And that's it.
Nice, awesome. And okay, Sunmin, how about you?
I kind of have like a rare name as well. I think that there's only like 21 people in Korea who have exactly the same name. It's most things are under that name, or Moody Max, which is like the opposite of my name, Sun Moon, Max Min, or whatever. But yeah, and I have another panel tomorrow that's Iris Muddy is hosting. So anybody who's curious, you can find me there too.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so in closing, I want to say a big thank you to all our speakers for this great discussion. It's been so enriching. Thank you so much. And thanks to also Julia Rido and Catherine Wyman for keeping an eye on the questions and chat, and to all of you spending time with us today. So be sure to check out some of the amazing cartoons made by our fantabulous students at Seneca by going to seneca2d.com. And to learn more about our programs, go to senecacollege.ca/create. That's all from us, and have a great time at Lightbox Expo. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See ya.